Welcome. I'm Alice Alicia Jones, and as you can see, I just washed my hair. Not the prettiest um, hairdo right now, but it's air dries is what it does. And I welcome you for another one of my Living Consciously videos. I'm very happy to do this. I get I'm able to share experiences that I've had over the years that I feel were just needed or um, were just outside the realm of what is called reality and need to be shared because I think other people have many similar experiences but don't talk about them. And I am more than happy to talk about my experiences. I do have a lot of them, and I'm always willing to share what I've learned. Today's topic is tree people, stone people, and dragons. Most of this, all of this that I'm going to cover today, happened in my trip to Iona. This was in the West Hebrides, and it was a trip that was billed as a spiritual trip. We were fortunate because we had, I think there was eight, nine, or 10 of us, and we met as a collective. I was able to go 3 days early, so I ended up in Edinburgh and went to Findhorn first. That's the community run by the nature spirits. And so I went there first by myself and then hooked up with the people and from the rest of the trip. And we started our journey by going to Roslin Chapel on absolutely an amazing structure built in the 15th century and just unfortunately was crumbling on the outside. So it had scaffolding all the way up to it, but I was able to buy a little magnet that showed what the outside looked like and had some beautiful experiences there, including a cello performance by one of the gals who was with us. But the first thing that I wanted to talk about was tree people. I want you to become aware of the fact that when you go out into the woods, and I hope you do this daily, but if you can't, whenever you can, um, notice the images that come off the bark. And as you become more familiar with this, I have seen giraffes in trees. I've seen elephant faces in trees, but mostly I see eyes, nose, mouth, sometimes chin, sometimes people stacked one on top of another. I call those tree condos, just like the fairy rings that in Iona that appeared with about 50 mushrooms rather than 12. I call those fairy condos. Really, when you start looking for them, you will be absolutely astonished as to what you can see, as to how many how many places this will be evident. And there is somebody in Brazil that is photographing faces of trees, and he has a postcard with about 32 images of it. And there were times where, and of course, the images weren't very big, but as I looked at the images, I thought, oh my God, that looks like a human face. That doesn't look like just a part of a tree. It looks like a human face. But yet, every single image came from a tree. And so, if any of you are going to Brazil, look for that postcard. I do have Brazilian friends, and I am going to ask that the next time they go to visit family in Brazil, that if they can go to like a newspaper a vendor, if they can find one, because I really would love to share it with you. Um, it was magical, and but the thing I can assure you is as you go looking, as you go taking your walks and start really staring at the tree trunks, you too will be gifted with seeing images, faces in trees. I know when I went to I'm sorry, when I went first to Findhorn, the lock that we were on, I'm pretty sure was Loch Lomond, which is the same loch that the Nessie monster is supposed to live in. And when I went there, I started gathering rocks. I was so excited about gathering rocks. And because they were so interesting, they were colorful, they were pretty, they were, had been worn smooth by, I guess, maybe millions of years of waves washing over them. Um, and I heard this voice inside my head, take one. And so I looked at my assortment in my hands and I thought, okay, I'll I'll listen. Chose one, brought it home, and when I because the message continued that when you go to Iona, you'll have plenty of rocks that you're going to want to take home. Iona is kind of at the northernmost tip of the West Hebrides, and the beauty with Iona is that the Gulf Stream goes by it and deposits all kinds of rocks there. So you can get rocks that look like brain coral. You can get rocks that have veining through them. You can get rocks that look like black lava. You can get rocks that are multicolored green. A really beautiful, beautiful variety. And so, sure enough, and when I went there, I started gathering rocks to the point where I think I had 20 extra pounds in my suitcase and had to weigh it very carefully to make sure I could get home because I didn't want to buy another suitcase um, to take home. But when I looked at the little rock that I had brought home from Findhorn, I saw a face in the rock, and I thought, isn't that amazing? I hadn't seen that before. I hadn't noticed, with anything, that, that special as I was kind of sorting through what rocks I was gonna throw away versus the rock I was gonna keep. But here was the one I brought home with me. Um, I forgot to look for it. It's downstairs. It sits on my little angel. I have three little angels that sit around a tall candle, and and then I put my ancient oils from the Bible around that, and I let my Reiki students smell those scents before their attunement. Forgot to see about bringing that rock home and, I'm sorry, bringing it here so I could show it to you, but if I can remember next time to do that, I will. Um, really, really interesting. I have another story to share with you about rocks that is actually uh, called Rocks That Move because even the National Geographic had a story about rocks that move, and they called this one gal had a um, motion detector on her camera, and she showed you. the lines in the sand of the rock that she called Speedy Gonzales. It had moved like over 200 feet, I think something like 275 feet from the time she set up the camera to the time she came back to get it. Um, but that there was a walk that I once took with a gal who was working as a secretary for me. And this is when I was walking my first dog, Corgi, called Taffy, Saltwater Taffy Jones, S. Taffy Jones. And we would go about 12 noon and we would take a brisk half-hour walk. And I noticed that as we were walking, as we left our subdivision, we crossed through 2 yards and went down the bike path towards Burke Lake, that eventually two rocks that had been maybe 20 feet away were closer and closer and closer. It was almost imperceptible because I think they moved about a quarter inch a day. So that the next day it was a quarter inch. But how I calculated their movement was I watched where they were in relation to the shrubs and bushes that they were crossing. And so finally, when they were about halfway, they, so about 10 foot away from us, I looked over at her and I said, Diane, those rocks. And she kind of goes, oh my God, you've noticed. And we both had been watching them, but neither of us said anything. And the irony to this sharing this part of my life with her, her last name was Trees. So it was, I always am so fond of that memory of having her as my companion, witnessing these rocks move. Ironically, when the rocks came close, one was larger, one was smaller. When the rocks came close to the edge, to the bike path where we were, they then moved back. Then they disappeared. Then one reappeared. And that was the end of it. There was no more movement. So I'm not really sure. I've never tuned into them. I've never asked them what their purpose was, what they were doing, but I I firmly believe that it was to help me accept the fact that not everything can be explained. And like I said, this um, in the National Geographic, probably in the neighborhood of 20, 25 years ago, this article on Speedy Gonzales, the rock that moved in the Gobi Desert, that was photographed by a gal in the Gobi Desert. Okay, let's get back to my trip to Iona. When we were, so we looked for stone people, we looked for tree people. I found tons of tree people. Everywhere I looked, I could, you know, see some semblance of a figure in the trees, but found very few stone people. So the gift from Finhorn was, very exciting to me afterwards. But one of the gals on my way home, she said, Alice, there's something else you've got to look for. And she said, that's dragons. And I thought, dragons? Wow. How do I find dragons? And because I left first, I can't remember the circumstances of this trip, why I actually had to leave first. Um, but I was on a train, and because that, for part of my journey, and because the train gave me the opportunity to look out the window, I would just look at the countryside. And sure enough, as I'm passing this verdant countryside, this absolutely luscious greens of Scotland, because every day we were there, there was a light mist that fell. Um, wasn't cold, it was a warm mist, but nevertheless, it made left everything sparkling. It left the grasses sparkling, the trees sparkling, and everything. As I'm looking out the window, there's a outcropping of soil. It's in the perfect shape of a dragon's head. And I look at it, and then I pass another one, same thing, and another hill, same thing. And then we got to, as we were nearing a station where the train had to stop, that we were going slow enough, one of the dragons winked. I could actually see the eye close and open. And what was so exciting to me is that dragons are, again, a fifth dimensional being. You can only see them if you can access fifth dimensional sight. They do exist now. They exist in the same place the fairies live, and all the elementals, including the gnomes, the undines, the sylphs, the salamanders, and brownies, pixies, trolls, every one of the nature spirits. But they have a special role that they are playing now with humanity. They absolutely want to be more well known. And I have a dear friend who is going to give a talk on dragons. She's done it for Rays of Healing, but she's going to be giving one, could be September before we can schedule her. But she's going to be giving one in for my students. And all of my talks, any classes that I teach are available on Zoom so that it doesn't matter where in the world you're at, you can partake in it. And if you can't partake, they will be uh, recorded. So if you can't partake in person, let's say it's 2 o'clock in the morning where you're at, then you certainly can partake in a Zoom recording of it. And I had a personal experience with a dragon recently. I had gotten into an argument with my husband. At this point, I can't even remember what the argument was about. Usually they're pretty stupid and not memorable at all. So I just kind of forgot about it, but I can remember going to sleep or trying to go to sleep at night and just feeling very whipped about this argument. So as I closed my eyes, what appeared was the white dragon. And the white dragon usually is the one of the red, the black, and the white that my friend speaks about. The white dragon is the one that appears for me. But as I'm looking at the white dragon, and it's kind of like curled, so that I could imagine myself standing and it curling itself around me, what showed up was a gold dragon. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my God. And even though I was in my bed, I stiffened, I straightened up, and I realized that I don't have to feel bad about what happened, what was said about the argument. Feeling bad was a choice. And I didn't have to stay there, I didn't have to live there. So I pass that on to you that whenever you get into any kind of energy where you feel you've been thwarted, you feel you've been knocked down, you feel like less than whatever it is, whatever you feel, that doesn't make you feel good, call on your personal dragon and see what shows up for you. It's magical because the beauty of it was that it instantly made me feel like I could release anything that was holding me onto me that was making me feel bad. I could just shed it. I didn't have to hold on to it. And that's why I share it with you is know that that's possible. Holding on to negativity is the worst thing you can do for yourself because it drags you down to its level. And I mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. Shame, blame, and guilt are the three lowest vibrations on the planet. Shame, blame, and guilt 30, 20, 10. And yet, how many people use the tactics to get you into a place of shame, blame, or guilt? And so just know if that's happening to you, you can shed it. You don't have to hold on to it. You can tell your guides, tell your personal dragon, you know, just help me get rid of this. And it will come into your sphere. So, anyway, I will continue. I'm not sure where we're going next time, probably with clouds. I have a lot of things to say about clouds. So I think that's what's coming next week. But I thank you for being here. If you have any need of my services, my website is Alicia, ALICJA Jones.com. And if you forget that, just go to Alice Jones Psychic and it'll take you to the same place. If you need a book on meditations, my book, Own Your Power, is literally the best that's out there. So, you want to know what God sounds like? He's quoted directly in Own Your Power and in the uh, lessons that have not been changed, the lessons that have been italicized, because those lessons were the ones that came in and I kept them exactly the way they came in. So I thank you for being here. I'll read your comments after I finish, and I am going to see you next week. Thank you.